This is Big Podcast.
It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. David Hooper with you. This is the podcast about growing your podcast, spreading your message, making more money with your podcast, making a podcast that people care about. I've got a site at bigpodcast.com. And this episode, just a little bit different. I am doing this from my office. Normally I'm in the studio. I've got a different mic today. A lot of things are different. No edits yet. We'll see. We'll see how I do. I've been talking about the podcast Jumpstart, and that has already started for this cohort, but I wanted to kind of share what's happening inside. It's a bunch of people that are getting their podcast together and moving forward. We all get stuck. We all find ourselves in ruts. York Campbell posted something that when I saw it, I thought, man, I've got to do an episode on this. And rather than print the thing out and get in the studio, fire up the system there, I've got a mic here. I'm going to go straight into my desktop and get this out. So York says this: podcast title evaluation and self-audit. That is the exercise. Like I said, this is part of the Podcast Jumpstart. It's a program with several dozen podcasters in there, all of them working to do little bitty things, little bitty tweaks that are going to make a big difference. And one of those things is your podcast title. He says this. He says, the current name of my show is Welcome to Earth Stories. The prior name was Poetic Earthlings. And this is the important part. This is why I'm doing this episode. I changed the name because I was tired of explaining the title. Poetic Earthlings didn't convey what the show was about. It's not a show about poetry. It's an audio fiction, but with the previous title, you may think otherwise. That's huge. I changed the name because I was tired of explaining the title. Sound familiar? If you're in that situation, that is a hint. You might want to look at your title. At least add a subtitle. People should know what they are getting with your podcast before they click play. If they don't, they're probably going to move on. Think about getting your mail every day. What do? You sort through it. I'm going to open this one. I'm going to recycle this one. I'm going to leave this one for a while. You know what you're getting into when you get your mail. You can say, well, what if people are curious? I want to build curiosity. Curiosity helps, right? Yeah, kind of. It's not bad to be curious. You want people curious about what you got inside your podcast. But if you can keep that curiosity, letting them have an idea of what's inside, being very clear about your title, your subtitle, your description, your artwork, all of this needs to convey what you were doing. You're going to do so much better. So that's the tip of the day. I'm going to keep it really simple. A gentle reminder that if you don't have the listeners that you want, if you're having to explain yourself, if the listeners that you're getting are not the listeners that you want, don't be afraid to change your title. Your podcast, it is a living, breathing thing. You can change it. Not everything is written in stone. Even if you were to do something that maybe in the past would have had more longevity, a book, a movie, radio show, you can always change what you were doing. And sometimes we don't know what we're getting into until we're in it. A lot of things are like that. A lot of things in life are like that. A diet, marriage, a new job, a new house, a new city. We don't really know what we're getting into until we get there. And your podcast is part of that. By the way, if you're interested in going deeper with these kind of things with me, this is my job. My job is to help you build an audience. My job is to help you grow your podcast, make it something that people care about, make it easy for people to subscribe to, make it easy for people to understand. This is the URL to go to. It's bigpodcast.com/AMP. AMP stands for Audio Monetization Program. Right now, I'm going to work with you personally. It runs about $50 a month. $50, cheap, right? It is probably too cheap, and it's not going to stay that price for long. Bigpodcast.com/AMP. If you like this podcast, you want to hear the real podcast, the one that I'm actually doing from my studio, it's not off the cuff like this one, a little more prepped out. Here's how to subscribe or follow. You can do either one. It's the same thing. but the URL is bigpodcast.com/subscribe, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Go there right now. Do it before you forget. I've got 3 buttons, one for iPhone, one for Android. I've got an RSS feed for you. Whichever one you pick, that will make sure that you never miss an episode. I've got new ones coming up, all of them designed to help you grow your audience, have more impact with your podcast, make a difference with your message. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I'll see you there, and I'll see you here on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.